Hi Booktube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the end of 2024 is already here. But I wanted to share with you my favorite books that I read in the last year. Of course, they weren't published in the last year, but they were my favorite reads, maybe is the best way. Now, I usually try to keep it to my five best books of the year. This became problematic this year. So I have a lot of honorable mention for 2024. It's interesting because it was a really kind of split year. There were a lot of books I loved and a lot of books I didn't really enjoy that much. But I want to focus on the things that are good that you should read or that I think you might enjoy. But we're going to start with and when I tell you my top five, they're not in any particular order. But a few books are kind of more honorable mentions. So, Karen Blixen, or as her pen name, Isaac Dinesen, wrote this collection of 5 short stories. If Babette's Feast were not among those 5 stories, I would not have given it 5 stars. So it's really Babette's Feast is 5 stars. You should definitely track it down and read it. Babette's Feast is a 5-star short story. That doesn't happen to me very often. So I just would really recommend that story. There's a couple other stories in here that were great. These stories take place all over the world. And there's another one called The Tempests, or just maybe it's just Tempests. But it does have a connection to Shakespeare's play The Tempest, and I think Jason would get so much more out of it than I would. And so anyway, but I'm hoping reading Babette's Feast will be kind of an annual thing for me going forward, which is saying quite a bit for a short story. Another delightful book that I gave 5 stars to, but it just doesn't really have quite the heft maybe of my top 5 is Thrush Green by Miss Reed. This is the first book in the Thrush Green series. I've since read the second one, which is Winter at Thrush Green, but this is just Miss Reed at her absolute best. The book takes place over the course of a day when there's a fair at Thrush Green and a carnival, and we start to learn about these different characters and get a sense of place, if you will. But anyway, so it's really lovely. I will keep on. I own one more book that is part of the series. So I will definitely read that, and then I'll have to start looking for more of these beautiful editions. But anyway, so don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it just, when you see my top 5, you'll understand why Thrush Green it's still worth mentioning, right? I would still say read it because you'll enjoy it. The next one is Katie Lumpson's book, The Trouble with Mrs. Montgomery Hearst. I think one of the great things about historical fiction is that writers are able to go back in time and tell stories that, of course, must have been happening at that time, situations that must have been going on, but the writers of that time were not allowed to write about them, or it wasn't appropriate, or if they did, they probably got in trouble for writing about it. So if you know Katie from Books and Things, she is just an expert in Victorian literature. I really enjoyed this book. I really found it refreshing. The idea, reading about a lesbian relationship set in the Victorian period, to read about, and Katie's not the first person to do that, but this book just is quite light. The other And I mean, Mrs. Montgomery Hearst does have a secret, you know. I'm not going to reveal it here, obviously, but yeah. So it's super fast. It's super just fun. I think I mentally I just struggled with it because there's so much in it that feels like Jane Austen, but it's not in Jane Austen's time. So just trying to mentally like flip that switch in my brain. But this is a great book. I gave it 5 stars. Again, would recommend that you read it as well. And then this one, right in at the last minute, I finished this Saturday morning. This is The Happiness Advantage, How a Positive Brain Fuels Success in Work and Life by Sean Achor. I'm not sure if this is going to be 5 stars or not. I haven't decided yet. It might be 4 stars. I would like a newer edition of this book. This particular edition, which has a book discussion question at the back, came out in 2013. I'd really like to read something post 2020. That addresses like how working remotely and how, you know, how our lives dramatically, you know, we're supposed to like social distance, which kind of goes against, right? Like some of the things, some of the principles of The Happiness Advantage. But there was so much in here. I mean, you can see how many sticky notes I have. And I'm really hoping over the course of the next year that I'll be able to put some of these principles into place and to start embodying this more. I can't find the spot in the book, but he does talk about connections and relationships and how the way we behave can affect other people, and their behavior changes can affect other, like we can have some kind of impact on, I think, like 1,000 people, which is really wild, and really, really interesting. And so that was just one part of the book that kind of made me think about Booktube and relationships. But I think I'm going to talk about that in my Friday Reads video, because I will, by that point, will have found where that is in the book. So those are my honorable mentions. For those of you who have been watching this channel for the last year, probably none of these books are going to be a surprise. I will say I don't ever include Shakespeare in my top 5 books of the year, because I just, Shakespeare is just on another level. Everyone who wrote these books was influenced by Shakespeare, or there's Shakespeare references, even if they're not aware that there's Shakespeare references. So, anyway, I have 3 novels and 2 nonfiction books. So, we'll do the not so surprising ones first. So, my primary goal, my number 1 objective for 2024 was to finish reading the Barsetshire Chronicles. I hope I'm saying that right. Barsetshire Chronicles by Anthony Trollope, and I did it. And that's Framley Parsonage, The Small House at Allington, and The Last Chronicle of Barset. So Framley Parsonage, as this cover just brilliantly illustrates, you know, it's kind of about a social climbing minister and some of the trouble he gets into because of his desire to sort of move up in the world, and his sister that comes to live with them, and some of the things that happen to her. And so, yeah, it was great. It was out. I mean, it's a fantastic book. This is the 4th book in the Barsetshire Chronicles series. The next book, the 5th book, is The Small House at Allington. And I love this book so much because it is so unorthodox and unexpected, and not even what we would expect Trollope to do, I think, in a novel. It is about two young women who live with their mother on I think it's their uncle's estate. He's a squire. They live in this little tiny cottage off to the side of his property, and again, their encounters with other people, things that happen to them, reminded me a lot of Sense and Sensibility in some ways. But yeah, it's a really brave book, I think. And yeah, it just, of all of the 6 books, it just stands out the most to me. And then finally, the last Chronicle of Barset, which brings almost all the major characters from the previous 5 books together, which is gutsy. It's a gutsy thing to do, I think. And the main focus is this poor, very poor minister. He's like a curate or something. I don't know the hierarchy of things, but yeah, so he gets into a situation that he can't explain, but it pulls on people from all of the other books, including The Warden, which is the first one, and it brings them all together. And I thought it was good. I really, really enjoyed seeing everybody kind of mixed in together, and remembering characters from the first 3 books, which honestly, it made me want to just go back and start reading them all again. But anyway, so this is an excellent series. That was my big goal for 2024. And I felt like if I hadn't read anything else in 2024, it would have been a successful year. That's 3 best books right there. So, okay. The next 2 are actually nonfiction, which I was a little surprised by, although I don't know. I feel like I do a good job of mixing in nonfiction and fiction. I did read 3 books this year that were and they were all by women authors. 2 of them I would consider the kind of nature writing, and one is more about humans and their relationship to animals. That was H's for Hawk, which is definitely, I sent it off to one of you who wanted it. Yeah, it was not for me. But this book just really rose to the top. This is called Rough Beauty, 40 Seasons of Mountain Living by Karen Avenin. I'm not sure how to say her last name. She's actually on Goodreads and recently went through and liked my reviews of her book, which is a first for me. That was an interesting experience. This book, I felt, did the best job of capturing, wilderness, life in the wild. Certainly, I've never experienced anything like what she goes through in this book, but I'll just read you a little bit of the back. In this gorgeous meditation on solitude and connection, award-winning poet Karen Avenin chronicles 40 seasons living wild in the Rockies, contending with the shifting landscapes of being alone. Already living in a small mountain town, Karen flees to a primitive cabin to embrace all the beauty and brutality nature has to offer and to be a writer. But when a fire incinerates nearly all her possessions except her truck and a few singed artifacts, Karen, along with her beloved dog Elvis, must begin again. Rough Beauty is a luminous, lyric homage to her time in the wilderness, embracing the unpredictability, and grace of living intimately with the forces of nature while making peace with her own wildness. And I found that I had a sticky note in this book, and I read it again, and the sticky note is staying in there because this is great writing, I think. So she finds it's almost like a forest. It feels like a forest of, I believe they're columbines. The fairy forest with its dappled things, its landscape plotted in peace, would become a kind of secret garden, a place I felt was all my own. We all made ground for stillness, but I wanted beauty too, to gather it in my fist and drag its skirt across the landscape of my days. I love that so much. When poets decide to write something other than poetry, I get really excited because I know the writing is going to be a notch above, as really, really good. So again, another one, if you're into nature writing at all, I highly recommend this one. So the last book on my list is one I wasn't expecting actually to read this year, and that is Judi Dench's book, Shakespeare, The Man Who Pays the Rent. For those of you who don't know, Judi Dench is losing her eyesight. She is slowly going blind. So this is, Judi Dench didn't write this book. She, Brendan O'Hay, interviewed her, recorded the interviews. I think initially he was just planning to give them to the Royal Shakespeare Company for their kind of archive or library or something like that. And instead it became something else. And I loved this book because when I read Shakespeare, obviously I don't know what it's like to be someone performing it. And so that was a really interesting insight to her performing Shakespeare, and how she embodied those parts, the things she did, the crazy things that happened in certain productions. You know, like, oh God, like she played Coriolanus' mother, and who was played by, I think, I can't remember who it was. But yeah, and she fell down on stage, and like the other actors just keep going on about their business, and finally she's like, no, really, I can't get up. I need someone. I need help. Anyway, so I mean, there's just something about live theater, right, that is just always unexpected. And you know, they played a lot of jokes on each other. Things happen on stage that, you know, you're not expecting. But anyway, so I really loved seeing that perspective, and I really loved just kind of getting to know Judi Dench better, and her her authenticity and sincerity, her passion for Shakespeare, and her naughty sense of humor. So there's some great Judi Dench stories, not only in here, but just if you just do a YouTube search, you can find some really funny stories about Judi Dench. But anyway, I loved this book so much, and it was a gift from one of you, and I'm just so grateful. So those were my favorite reads of 2024. I would love to know what your favorite reads were. What were the best books you read? Yeah, if you have any thoughts about the books that I have mentioned here. So thank you so much for watching this video. Happy New Year to everyone. Booktube. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye.